Guys, welcome to this episode of our Rolling Through Negotiations podcast. This one is one that I'm excited for because we got the sharp and deadly Dion Devow with us here today. Dion Devow, how are you, brother?
I'm very well, thank you, Brother Matthew. How are you going? Thank you for having me, by the way.
It's always a pleasure seeing you, brother, and I think that people are going to get a lot out of this episode. You've got an amazing story, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this.
Cheers. Thanks for that.
And before we kick off, I would like to first give our acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the lands in which we're on today. I'm here on Kaurna country. Since we're online, let us pay respects to all First Nations peoples and our elders, past, present, and future. Whose country are you on right now, Dion?
I'm Wukarukaba. So that's Townsville area. And it's Wukarukaba is actually the nation, and I'm Mumbara and part of the group of Palm Islands, which is off the coast of Townsville in northern Queensland, and I'm part of the Wukarukaba Nation also. But these mob here call themselves Wukarukaba as the tribe, whereas I'm a Mumbara Nankara Wankara, and that's my tribe. But I'm part of the Wukarukaba Nation. Yeah.
Awesome. And let's also acknowledge the
Wukarukaba.
Say it again, brother.
Wukarukaba.
Let's also acknowledge Rukaba country.
Yes.
Where you're coming from today as well, brother.
Yeah.
I think whenever we give acknowledgements, one of the challenging pieces is really respectfully being able to get the pronunciation.
Yes.
As best as we possibly can.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
I just want to share this quote. I've got a bit of a tradition where I share an inspiring quote at the beginning of each and every single episode of Rolling Through Negotiations. And this one here was inspired by you, brother. It's by Benjamin Franklin. And he said, without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. And I thought those words were very fitting for the kinds of things that you've been able to achieve in your career and the work that you do. You've inspired me and many people in community about the growth and progress and improvement that you've been able to bring, brother.
Oh, thank you. That's nice to hear. I don't actually think that, but so when you hear it, it's kind of like, who are you talking about?
No, it's true. I think
it's nice to think that, or to hear that. You know what I mean? Because I think we just go about our daily lives and work really hard and to provide for our families and try and help our people and promote our culture to help people see us, in a more positive way. Because like we're often not portrayed. In the best light all the time, especially through media, social media. And so, I kind of feel like, and you do that as well, incorporate, our culture into, because it's at the center of who we are, of our being, and we kind of incorporate that into our everyday lives and our work and through our achievements and so forth. And in the hope that it does, kind of shed a more positive light on who we are as a people. And sometimes you don't have the opportunity to hear feedback around the fact that, some of the work that we do, it does get through and does make a difference and is positive and touches other people's lives and inspires other people. You know what I mean? So it's kind of it's nice to hear that feedback.
Yeah, awesome, brother. And it's nice to be able to see the deadly work that you do and be able to experience the inspiration you bring. Because you started off your career many years ago working in community health.
Yes.
And when you speak about improvement personally and also community-wise, like what's your journey been like starting off in that place of community health and then, stepping forwards into your deadly business at Darkies Designs, and you've got a technology business well, and what's your improvement and growth journey been like?
I think like when I started out just in the workforce, I was obviously young, just I left high school, grew up in Darwin, and I left high school in year 12 and worked for a couple of years before I went to university, tried a few different sectors, hospitality being one. And then kind of, I was always really interested in health. And so got the opportunity to work as an Aboriginal health worker liaison officer at the Darwin Hospital. And I think, that was my first real job. And then, working with community, you know what I mean? And really kind of working with grassroots people, Aboriginal people from all around the Northern Territory who would come in to, Darwin being the kind of hub and capital of the Northern Territory for health treatment. So I really got a good understanding of a countryman, you know what I mean, and people, what we would call, what some people call traditional mob, living out bush, coming in and really experiencing them and having lots to do with them, seeing the effects of living remotely, how that impacted on their social and emotional well-being, but more their physical kind of being in terms of their health status. So, but really kind of getting to understand how beautiful they are. You know what I mean? How beautiful our people are, and so smart, knowing like lots of different languages, then English, but then that also becoming a barrier in terms of being able to kind of communicate properly with respect to their specific health conditions, which kind of played into my role as an Aboriginal liaison officer, being that middle person and communicating and transporting and advocating for our mob, in between the person between the client, that being those Aboriginal mob patients, and the nurses and doctors and so forth. So I did that for a long time.
Yeah.
In that sector, not a long time in that job, because I went from health to education, and I worked as an Aboriginal education worker, so like a teacher's assistant, but with Aboriginal kids that were from a community in Darwin called Bagot, where a lot of traditional mob come for the same reasons: health, education, whatever. So that it's kind of in the centre of Darwin, this
Yep.
little community, which is a little bit odd. It's different to other places, because it's like, a little community on its own of all these Aboriginal mob that the ones that I was working with at Ludmilla Primary School were kids that were multilingual. So their English levels were kind of that, even though they were aged between 9 and 13, or 9 and 12, sorry, their kind of grammar and English levels were maybe that of maybe year 3, 4 students. So it was ESL, English as a second language, kind of classroom. And so that was really a really interesting kind of part of my journey in terms of a career also, but also because my mother's a teacher and she worked at that school also when I was growing up. And I had a lot to do with the kids in the Bagot community growing up, because my mother would be there running, holiday education programs through all the school breaks, from the time I grew up
Yeah.
until I was an adult. So I was kind of always with those kids anyway. So to work there was a different experience, and I was kind of working with some of the children of the kids that I had kind of grown up with also. So that was interesting also. But then I kind of went back into health. I realised I didn't, because I thought I might have wanted to do education and become a teacher like my mother, but I just didn't have the patience. So it was good in that sense too. So I went back to health, and then I went and studied and moved down to Canberra, completed a Bachelor of Applied Science and Health Education, and then kind of lived and worked in Canberra Hospital, and worked in the areas of social and emotional wellbeing at the Aboriginal Medical Service and Wananga Nimitija. And so that kind of all of those years are working on the ground with people and working with different organisations, both black and white, locally, nationally, having my connections back in the Northern Territory, having the opportunity to travel around the country, as an Aboriginal health worker, also promoting health-specific Aboriginal programs, gave me a huge amount of networks. And so it kind of, not really understanding that, I didn't realise I'd end up in business one day or become a business person, but that set the kind of baseline for all of my communication and all of my networks and all of the people who were, potential clients into the future and are today. So all of that work, the 10 to 15 years that I worked in health and then education, health education, then back in health, and then working in justice as well, Aboriginal justice in the Aboriginal courts,
Yep.
kind of set me up to launch a business, because I had all these networks, black fellas all around the country,
Yeah.
and white fellas as well in different sectors, because I've worked in health, education, justice, and then kind of fell into business.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that kind of was a grounding, I think, for, and also always being the middle person in between, black fellas and white fellas, and bringing them together,
Yeah.
was always a role that I played, and it kind of transferred into my business. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's what I've always tried to do with my clothing line, with my IT company. I just recently developed another business, which is all about solar energy, clean energy, which
Yep.
is a really interesting sector, I think. And I'm learning as I go, but I kind of feel like it's an opportunity for Aboriginal people out in communities to be able to tap into that sector, for economic development, to create businesses, to attain employment, to create empowerment and sustainability in their communities without having to leave. It's a really kind of new sector, but I think that it's one that into the future we'll participate more in, blackfellas that being, and be able to benefit from that economically,
Yeah.
and also be able to kind of put money back into the community and learn more about how we can preserve our country, both land and sea. And so that's what I really love about being a business person, is that you can kind of delve into areas that you don't necessarily know a lot about, but with your skill set and your networks and the knowledge that you've attained,
Yes.
with your business acumen,
Yep.
you can kind of, and it's not, I'm not saying that it's easy, but you can go into sectors that you don't necessarily know a lot about, but
Yes.
learn, make a difference, be creative, and make money, and help
Yes.
people, bring black and white people together. So that's really been at the center of everything that I've done in my life, is helping people, helping firstly my people, and then secondly bringing black and white people together, and then thirdly really trying to show, non-Indigenous people in Australia and the world how smart and creative, and how beautiful, our people and our culture is. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've survived so long,
Yeah.
because of the attributes that we have, and they're still very alive today. And you
Abs-
and I are perfect examples of that. We can
Yeah.
live in two worlds and be successful in both. You
Yes.
know, um, so yeah,
And it seems like you have an amazing story that you've been able to see also firsthand challenges and struggles that are experienced by mob within those paramount areas like health,
yeah,
education, justice. And I really appreciate the strength that it would take by you and all other people that work in those sort of areas, because to be able to see mob who are finding it really difficult from that health perspective, or the alarming education situation and
mm,
justice type scenarios, to be able to navigate and work in those environments, and then to work through in your own career into then developing business, you've been able to then see firsthand the truth and power that is behind the thinking of the closing the gap policy, for example, because you've seen the problems and you also understand that business is such a powerful vehicle
mm,
in,
yes,
in making inroads in those areas. So that's pretty exciting stuff as well. And brother, you've given TED Talks. You've given a TED Talk before, which is a pretty inspiring one that you gave. I see your trophy behind you there, Australian of the Year. You've done amazing things, and in that you've also set up a business that's doing well, Darkies Designs. And I've got one of your tank tops, brother, and over the Christmas holidays was my favorite. It's one of my favorite fashion items. Makes the muscles look good in that one.
you got to have them first.
It's hard to match like you, brother, you know, but no, it's a great tank top. I love it. And were you the first or one of the first blackfella fashion labels?
I don't think I was the first, but I was kind of I was one of few, because we're going back, 13 years now,
Yeah.
back to 2011, and there had been a few around for from as early as the late 60s and early 70s, but I don't think it was kind of that. They were kind of boutique-ish, you know what I mean? Like, and so, and not that popular. I think even when I started, you see the market today is flooded everywhere you look. There's every day I see another Indigenous clothing label, kind of being developed. But when I started, there's probably only about four of us, and so and it all stemmed from when I was traveling as a health worker around the country, and we were wearing all this health promotion material, and they're all giveaways, water bottles, hats, caps, and all that sort of stuff. And I really saw how and we had Aboriginal art on there, and I really saw how the kind of how those items, connected with the mob. And how they were really proud to wear them, and it almost made them feel better. You know what I mean? You could just see, oh, they got this dirty t-shirt, it had dirty design on it. So that was kind of what inspired my thinking around, oh, okay, when I come back from the road trip, uh, I thought I'll go online and see if I can find any cool Aboriginal items, clothing. And like I said, there was a couple, but they weren't really my style. And I thought, oh, I don't really want to spend money on, something that I don't want to wear. So I thought I might come up with my own. And so I just worked with a friend at the time and came up with, I think it was about 10 designs. And then and I really just designed them for me. So, because I just thought, well, it can't be that hard, not knowing anything about clothing or, business or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I came up with these 10 cool designs that I thought, I want to wear, and, came up with a business name. At the time, it was Darkies Designs. It's now, I've changed it. This is 13 years later. There was a message in that, like being proud about being Aboriginal, being proud about being dark skinned, or being proud of, even if you're light, it didn't really matter what your color or how light or dark you were. Like, it was all about, for me, trying to get the message that we, should be really proud of who we are, and clothing is a really cool way of being able to do that. Promote our culture, promote us as being Aboriginal people, but also, a little bit tongue in cheek too. You know what I mean? And also using that word darkies, which was always used so derogatory, in a derogatory way.
Yes.
Historically, changing it so that, changing the meaning of that, so almost negating that, the way that it was used historically, that people go, oh, okay, it's Darkies Designs. And now, all of those years later, I think it took around about a decade for people to go, to not go, oh, Darkies Designs. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, yeah, it's Darkies, it's Dion. That's Dion's business. So I kind of feel like I did that. And I think that I probably would have been more kind of out there and successful if I had named it something different in the beginning. But I was trying to send a message. I was trying to say how proud I was of being Aboriginal and dark skinned. And I think, the message did get out there, but it also had negative connotations also. And it was harder as a business person to promote that, because the word was so controversial. And so I feel like I proved the point. I was still successful, and I'm you talked about my Australian of the Year award. That's one of the reasons why I'm an Australian of the Year, because of Darkies Designs, because of my business, and because of the choice of the word that I named my business, to try to prove something and send a message that wasn't negative, that was positive, and in turn try to help my people by promoting our culture, our art, our language, through art, through design and clothing. And so, I did a whole revamp of the Darkest Design label. It's now D Designs, and I always had that as a plan, because my name's Dion Devow, and it was DD. I didn't have to change much stuff in the future around, the whole vision and the name. And so it's kind of pivoted a little bit, got a lot more items of clothing and designs, and branched out into a lot of different products also.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting journey for me as well, because it's like I feel like nowadays, going back to what I was talking about before, there only being four or five different labels across the country. Now there's heaps, and it's a lot more common for non-Indigenous people to embrace, Aboriginal art and culture and design on clothing, on items of clothing, especially where I live now in northern Queensland. A lot of non-Indigenous people have it on their uniforms, have it on their cars, have it on, you know what I mean? It's a lot more prevalent these days, and it makes it harder for me as an Indigenous designer to compete. But I think, I was part of that movement of change around making it acceptable, for non-Indigenous people to think, well, I don't have to be Aboriginal to wear an Aboriginal clothing item. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I think that's cool.
Absolutely. And also I love the integrity piece in this as well, Dion, where it sounds like not only did you want to start a business with Darkies Designs, but it was also about sending that public message, which is
Yes.
what inspired you to use the word Darkies. And so I really love your integrity piece where, it might ruffle some feathers, but that's the point of this.
Mm.
And by doing that, you've been able to have some sort of impact into creating change. And the world is very different now as opposed to what it was 13 years ago. So
Yes.
being able to step forward like that would have taken some courage as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I try to use humor too as well around it. Like I said, a bit tongue in cheek, but also, yeah, trying to make it cool and funny as well. You know what I mean? To kind of break the ice. It was a good icebreaker in a lot of different settings. So, and like I said, they weren't always positive conversations, but it did, kind of agitate a bit. But I think in the long term, it was a really positive experience, and it really gave me the strength to be able to create to bring out my creativity. You know what I mean? To bring
Yeah.
black and white Australia together, to help people, especially our people, to feel proud of themselves by, displaying something really deadly about our culture on items of clothing and other apparel.
Yeah.
And I made money out of it as well.
Yeah. Awesome. That's always a nice bonus and nice way to enter entrepreneurship. And
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
wearing a pretty deadly t-shirt today saying just gammon. Is that one of yours?
yeah, man. Yeah, that's one of my original ones. So that's pretty, yeah,
Yeah.
just
For,
yeah,
for,
only
for
mucking
any
around,
for
Yeah,
anyone listening to this on the podcast who might not be able to see the t-shirt, it's really deadly. It's a black t-shirt. Just is in this amazing white text. Then you've got the Aboriginal flag colours of the gammon in
yeah,
red and the yellow dot at the end. I love it. It's another one that makes your muscles look big as well, and it's really sharp t-shirt, brother. So if people jump on, if people want to get one of these OG tops, right? If they jump on
yeah.
your website, Darkies Designs, can they see it on there?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So it's just ddesigns.com.au or www.ddesigns.com.au. So formerly Darkies, but it's just DD, it's just Dion Devow Design now. So it's
Yeah.
like, like I said, it was part of the plan to always transition into that, because I had, that kind of uh, forward thought around, just kind of streamlining it and making it more accessible for Australians and people internationally as well, not just Aboriginal people. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, www.designs.com.au is the website. So there's a whole heap of new items on there. So it's not just clothing. Yeah, yeah. It's really cool. I'm really
Yeah.
proud of
Beautiful.
it. Mm.
And you've said a couple of things in terms of your health and education and justice journey, and then also the journey about making change step by being controversial, but also holding to your integrity by using the word darkies. They're fitting together, but they're also showing this internal resilience, because I think that you're a man of courage, and these sorts of things show that kind of courage. And when it comes to negotiations, I honestly believe it's really powerful when you can hold your inner space, your inner thinking, your inner values strong through a negotiation process. I was
Mm.
wondering, brother, if you can share with us a negotiation that stands out that you've been in. It might have been a challenging negotiation, or one that went particularly well, or perhaps one that you learned from. Is there a negotiation that you've been involved in in your career and your businesses that really stands out?
Well, there's lots. I'm negotiating all the time because I'm a business
Yeah.
person, right? So, and I've had to learn to be, really strong around negotiation, especially when we're talking about fees, money, all that sort of stuff. Sometimes I think it's harder for our mob to be able to, especially when you're starting out, to understand your value and your worth.
Yeah.
I also do some consultancy, so I'm always negotiating on price. But I think you just have to go in with confidence. You have to know what you want. You have to know what your value is, what you bring to the table, in order to be able to have confident, open, transparent communication about money.
Yes.
I think, as a business person, that's really at the heart of what business is, like about, creating your own income. And obviously there's lots of things that surround that. But if you don't have the confidence to say, well, even around my clothing, well, what do I put on a price for a t-shirt? What do I think people are prepared to pay? So I think there's a little bit of market research that you have to do when you're thinking about that type of thing, specifically around negotiating for yourself. What is a reasonable price for people? And when you're negotiating for yourself, when it comes to finances, I think, you're going back to what I said before, also knowing your value, your worth, and what you bring to the table, and then being able to have the confidence to say, well, this is my fee. And then also, and sometimes people are like, yep, no worries. Other times I'll say, that's a little bit high. So, you have to kind of really rethink that, and be prepared to either lower your price or walk away. And you know what I mean? Sometimes it's more powerful to say, well, you know what, thank you for your offer, but I have other commitments, and I have other people and organisations that are prepared to pay me for my time, and are okay with paying that fee. So maybe when you have enough money in your budget, you can come back to me, and we can negotiate and move forward and work together into the future. But for now, I have to think about other opportunities and other things that are willing to pay me my price, and then say, see you later. You know what I mean? It's not always about the money,
Yeah.
but it's about being able to stand tall and strong, and be confident to say, this is who I am, this is my business, this is what I offer, my value add, this is the price. And but also kind of finding the that happy medium, whereby you can lower it to a certain point, but beyond that, it's a no-go. And I think that's a really powerful position to put yourself in. And in terms of being a professional, you're seen serious as a serious professional that won't, lower your standards when it comes to what you feel like you're worth. But I think that's also not just when we're talking about money; it's about your integrity. We touched on that before.
Yep.
When people approach you to possibly want to represent or promote something that you don't necessarily believe in.
Yeah.
And that might be a political thing. There's lots of, you can't be black in this country without being political, right?
Yeah.
I'm not very political in terms of, how I portray myself and communicate myself on social media in a real bold way. I do it quite subtly, and I'll, because I'm not someone that likes to antagonize unless I really want to or have to.
Yeah.
Or if I'm wanting to make a point, like my first business, Darkies.
Yep.
But for the most part, I kind of respect people's beliefs and values and opinions, both black and white. And black politics is really hard to navigate sometimes, especially when you are black,
Yeah.
because everybody thinks that you have the answers to everything.
Yep.
If I could have charged, maybe I should have charged a consulting fee for, the voice and the referendum, because the amount of people that kind of, both black and white, had
Yeah.
contacted me specifically to ask my opinion and how they should feel about it and so forth. Oh, it was like crazy. But I mean, we never got up, and that was disappointing. But I kind of feel like, obviously, the message wasn't strong enough or clear enough. I'm not sure, but I think people need to be educated more.
Yep.
But even around that, like I've been asked to promote certain things, to do certain things, to be part of certain businesses and movements, and I've said no because they don't align with my values.
Great.
So and sometimes they've been really close friends. Sometimes they've been people that have offered me a lot of money, But I think, in terms of negotiation, and negotiating those and navigating those things, like if you're looking through the lens of your own kind of blackness, and working with integrity and trying to protect, your reputation, and everything that you've built, because, our name is everything when you're a business person.
Yes.
Really at the end of the day, that's, you can have lots of things, but if you don't have that, then no one will come near you. So I
Yes.
think you have to be we have to be really mindful of that as black businessmen in this country, and we need to protect our reputations and our integrity, and also that tall poppy syndrome that you face to the more success that you have. We get hammered by
Yes.
sometimes our own mob, unfortunately,
Yep.
non-Indigenous people, unfortunately. But I think it's not a black thing. It's a human thing.
Yes.
We might call it in the black community lateral violence. White fellows call it tall poppy syndrome. But that's another thing too that we have to deal with. That with our successes and our achievements, and it's all par for the course. It's not easy. It's not nice.
That's
Um,
right.
but even you know, I think negotiating around things that you're not comfortable with, that could affect your reputation, is important as well. It's not just about negotiating around money. It's negotiating around what you do within your professional role, and promoting causes and things like that, or products that don't necessarily align with who you are as a person. You have to kind of decline.
Yeah.
So that can be one way that you have to negotiate as well. That it could be monetary, but yeah, it's like I said, all the time. Yeah, every day you're negotiating around um, things. I think as a business person, so it's an interesting topic. Yeah,
Yeah. And awesome, Dion. And you touched on many things. A couple of things that really stood out for me there is number one, it's about the responsibility as a black fella. Like whenever there's a topic that gets a lot of publicity or awareness, you can be asked as an Aboriginal person what your views are. And sometimes
mm.
you can ask that question as if you're speaking on behalf of all black fellas.
Yes,
And I think that's an interesting scenario to be in because on the one hand, you do have a responsibility to your family, to community, to speak out. On the other hand, your view is just, one is a view of one Indigenous person. You
yeah,
can't speak for all blackfellas. You can't speak
no,
at all. And I think that it's really important for people to understand that when they hear the
yes,
view of a blackfella, that is not the view of all Indigenous peoples. And, the voice referendum is an example of that because we did
yeah,
have Indigenous peoples on the no side as well as the
mm,
yes side. And
yes,
so that in itself deserves respect in terms of we can each make up our own mind and we don't all have the same views because we are also, as much as we are collective, we're also individual in
yes,
our thinking and our spirit.
yeah. That's
And
exactly right.
I love the way you called out the elephant in the room too, brother, because sometimes money can be almost like a taboo topic.
Mm,
You
yes,
hear people speak about all these business success principles, and they'll speak about value and values and having your social purpose clarified, and all those points are really, really important. But I think especially when you look at Aboriginal businesses and Aboriginal community organizations, without having the financial support behind you, then it's really hard to deliver real change.
yes,
And I believe that a big piece of self-determination is in understanding the commercial currency and being able to get paid properly on price
yep,
for things that we create and what we provide, whether it be in goods and services. So I really
mm,
appreciate you speaking about money in that sense. Do you have anything, Dion, in terms of your business experiences? Do you have anything where you've really learnt through the school of hard knocks? Have you ever been in a negotiation type situation or a business deal where, you know
yeah,
what, you've been wrapped on the knuckles pretty hard, you've learnt the hard way,
mm.
and I was wondering if you could share that kind of a war story with us.
Yeah. No, a few instances where I've been um, taken advantage of, used, especially when it comes to people seeing some of the things that I've done and my profile, and approaching me to go into business. And like I said before, to promote, maybe to promote things or to align myself with their company or their movement or whatever. Um, and there have been a few business kind of matters that have gone uh, not so well. And what I learned from that is that, and lost contracts as a result of that, by people using me to help, using me in my business to help win work, and
Yeah.
then taking the contract away from me, white handing me and my business, you know, destroying relationships that I've had through my connections and the work that I've done in the past. And there was nothing really that I could do about it because I didn't have anything in place in terms of that was contractual in the beginning in relation to that partnership that I had with that particular company.
Yeah.
And so I lost a lot of money. I think I lost some friendships as a result of that too, and I lost faith, a little bit of
Mm.
faith in the business community and sector as well. And so, you know, being the person that I am and always have been brought up to, you know, help people, to give, to share, to bring people together. As a business person, I've had to be a lot less like that. I mean, not totally turn away from being that person, but to protect myself and my companies and my business and my family, which at the end of the day, this is what we do. All this is why we work so hard. I've had to really kind of protect myself legally. And I mean, you even represented me one time around a particular matter.
Lucky you had a great lawyer on your side there,
Yes,
Dion.
yes, yeah, I did. I had you on speed dial. But do you know what I mean? I think, you know, as black business people and business people in general, you have to protect yourself. You have to read your contractual obligations, what are kind of set out and what you're supposed to do. You have to meet those. And I think when you're going into partnership with people, you have to do your due diligence. You have to suss them out. You have to do any sort of research that you can. Everybody's online these days. It's not
Yes.
hard to find out who these people are,
Yes.
and be very wary when people approach you, especially if you have had a little bit of a success, and it's not just in business, because not every day people will be drawn to you or come to you with something if they don't want something from you. And so, you know, that's okay, by the way. I mean, I think the IPP is a fantastic thing. I'm so sick of hearing about black cladding,
Yes.
because, you know,
Sorry, brother.
it should have been discussed in the beginning. You know, when they were bringing the bloody thing out, we all knew about it. Lots of blackfellas knew about it, and now
Yeah.
it's a big thing. You know what I mean? It's just like, so now we're kind of under the microscope even more when we go into these genuine partnerships with non-Indigenous people, which is what the IPP was created for.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
like, they're scared to, well, who are these, you know, like we're getting scrutinized even more. So
Yes.
so I just kind of feel like we have to protect ourselves, we have to protect our families, we have to protect our you know, our reputations. And I think that's about being vigilant around these things. And I wasn't in the beginning. I was too trusting of people,
Yep.
and that nearly destroyed my career and my finances, to a certain extent. And I think that, you know, you just have to be really, really careful, protect yourself as much as you can. You know, you can't be lazy when you're in business, you know, even though you're doing everything, you know, from your social, sometimes you do your own social media, you do all the page, you do, you know, especially when you're starting out, you know, you
Yes.
have to do everything, pay your own super. It's a lot of work. And so, you know, when anybody looks at anybody in business and says, "Oh, I think I might do that," well, I'd advise against it, because unless you've got some cash coming in the door every week or every fortnight or every month from another source of income, you know,
Yep.
don't think you're going to go out and blaze the world in the business sector. And you know what I mean, overnight, because it takes a lot of work and effort, and you would know yourself. You're always working. I mean, look, you're a lawyer and you're doing a podcast, so you know, you have to be creative. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be aware of your competition. You have to be aware of people that are coming to you, you know, pretending to be, you know, wanting to help you and go into business with you, or partner you with you, or buy from you. You have to be very careful about who you really, at the end of the day, basically associate yourself with. Um,
Yes.
and I think that if you don't, then you leave yourself open, you know, to 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 be targeted, and you can suffer. You know, your reputation can suffer, your finances can suffer. And this particular situation that I'm talking about,
Yes.
I was anted, if that's a word. And then I still don't think that the client really believed me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? This other party came in and totally turned, um, you know, the client against me and my business and my business partner, stole the contract away from us, um, and and with by, you know, spreading all these lies and, uh, um, you know, misinformation and non-factual information, which damaged my relationship and my reputation, probably to a certain point until this day, because that's never been rectified, and
Yeah.
I've not had the time to try to rectify that.
Yeah.
And so I don't even really know what was said, but, you know, obviously to lose a contract, it wasn't positive. So, you know, and again, I probably could have fought it, but then that costs time and money and more resources that I wasn't prepared to pay.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you know, you have to go in and fight and use the resources and stand up for yourself, you know. But other times you just have to walk away and go, I'll chalk that one down to experience, and I'll never let that happen to me again. And it hasn't.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, you have to be really, really careful. And I could have lost everything.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't. And it's lucky that I do lots of different things, and I have, you know, different sources of income coming in all the time. And
Yeah.
I quite like that, because I like to do different. It's not about always the money, but I like to do different things. So I don't have to rely on one source of income, whereas some businesses just have one business.
Yes.
Um, so, you know, that could be detrimental to them and just totally abolish everything they've ever done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you just have to be really mindful of people and put things in place, have it all in writing, whether it's a contract or email exchanges that you can go back and say, well, listen, this is what we discussed in the beginning. It's written, you know. Um, you know, there's proof and documentation there. Um, I'm not sure about MOUs. That's kind of, you know, you're the lawyer, but even that might be just something that kind of is a framework around, you know, instructions on how you move forward together in business. And I think that that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Um, so I think all those sorts of things, just document everything, make sure that you're very clear about what you're doing and who you're going into business with. Very clear. The
Yeah.
money is a good thing. Who's getting what are the percentages? You know, you have to talk about all those things, and you have to be confident enough to have those conversations with these parties about what their expectations are. You know, even who's leading, uh, because you can, especially if they're your contact or your network and that relationship that you have that they're honing in on and using, um, because it can be taken away like that.
Yes.
So, you know, you have to make sure that your networks and your contacts and your power within these relationships is really solidified through your communication and the documentation, but also making sure that you secure and protect your networks and your relationships, because without them, you know, like that's how I make business, you know, with the people that I know and the organizations that I know, both new clients. I've had clients for, you know, since back in the day, 13 years, that still come back to me and, you know, get t-shirts and, you know, promotional materials, and because they trust and value the product, but I have a relationship with them.
Yes.
And so they're part of your currency. You know, you have to maintain and protect those relationships, because they can be taken away just in an instant.
Absolutely. And relationships are extremely important. And so too is what you were saying before about having the right contract in place.
Mm.
Because if somebody wants to try and take advantage of an Aboriginal business, say through something like black cladding,
Mm.
that person or corporation, the white black cladder,
Mm.
they could say whatever words sound good, and you might make the mistake of just trusting based on the words that are spoken.
Yeah.
But the process of actually writing a contract sets a great framework for
Yep.
deepening and developing the relationship and for making sure that everybody's on the same page. And then in understanding the contract, you've got some really
Mm.
clarity about the deal that you're getting into. And then by
Yep.
having a written and signed contract that's legally enforceable, that means if you ever strike troubles, you've got this legal document that you can
Mm.
rely on. And so
Yep.
the contract itself is an extremely powerful vehicle when it comes to
Yep.
negotiations. And I
Yes.
think that contracts can help give clarity to relationships. And the process of creating a contract can make relationships even better as well.
Yes. Absolutely.
Sometimes people say, let's steer away from a contract because we've got a great relationship. Well, I think the other way. I think that because you've got a great relationship, that's why you should have a contract so that
Yes.
everybody can be clear and on the same page. Because once it's in writing, everybody then has got something that they can read, they can refer to, and they can be clear about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sometimes, I think you're exactly right there because um, sometimes you do things in business with friends, and
Yeah.
I protect those friendships when you're
Yes.
going into business. And I would advise against it, to tell you the truth, because I would
Yeah.
rather have a friend as opposed to a friend in a business partner.
Yeah.
It's okay to become friends with your business partner, I think, but when you go into business with a friend or a family member, there are lots of complexities in that, and it can tarnish that relationship into the future. So I think those contracts and things are very, very important to protect yourself and to protect the other parties, but to really kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page and there's something you can refer to. When things become a little unclear or lines are kind of crossed, or you're going down a path that wasn't kind of initially planned. So and at the end of the day, the money.
Yes.
Who's getting what?
Yes.
It's really, really important. So,
Yeah. And
yeah,
having clear communication around those points is really going to help in the negotiation process and also in harboring good relationships. Because I think it doesn't really matter the context you're in, whether it's in business, whether it's in parenting, whether it be in husband and wife type
mm,
scenario. A lot of arguments can come about when there's unclear communication, where
yes,
people are left thinking, oh, that's what that person meant when it wasn't. So the
yeah,
clearer we can get in our communication, it might also mean the clearer and better we can have in terms of relationships as well.
yeah, yeah, and even the language, because sometimes the language can be obscure. And I've recently kind of had a contract where the language within the contract is kind of quite vague, ambiguous, and so that leads to kind of communication from between myself and the client around what the expectation is and what is actually expected in terms of outcomes, because the language is a bit obscure.
Yes.
So even when there is contracts and documents kind of in place, sometimes you still have to be clear and have that authentic, open communication, honest communication about the interpretation of a contract as well.
Yeah.
Language can sometimes mean so many different things, and you might be looking at it from one perspective and your client looking at another, and that can obviously affect what the outcomes in the expectation of the other party as opposed to yours. So
Yeah.
that's really important as well.
For sure. And I think that means a couple of things when it comes to contracts. I think number one, it means having, as a lawyer, writing contracts that are really clear and easy to understand
Yes.
and avoiding legalese where possible. That's not always easy to achieve because you have to have really watertight wording in a contract to give it clarity as well. So there is that balance, but the important piece of making sure contracts can be read and clearly understood by clients. And then the other piece of that is if you're in business or if you're given a contract, not just chucking the dice in the air and signing the dotted line, but instead getting advice from a lawyer that speaks the language that you can
Yeah.
understand clearly
Yeah.
so that you can understand the contract
Yep.
because clarity is essential. Hey, brother,
Yeah.
we've reached this moment in time in Rolling Through Negotiations podcast that's very challenging for me each and every single week. I say it's challenging because it is. I
Yep.
like to give our listeners some takeaways, and I like to give 3 takeaways from each episode that listeners can then utilize in their own negotiations. And the reason why it's so challenging is because we've been speaking for a bit of time. You've shared so much gold, so much wisdom, and inevitably I'll be missing points in these takeaways. But by highlighting these 3, I think it will be really helpful as well. So 3 great takeaways that I take from Dion Devow when it comes to negotiations is I really love the piece about integrity is the first one. When you created Darkies Designs, that then led to your achievement in winning the Australian of the Year awards, and in the work that you do and the way that you go about your businesses and the way you go about life as a black fella and as a human being, living with your values and operating from that place of integrity. Sometimes that might mean making a little less dollar to begin with, but
Yep.
you can always hold your head higher. And living in that place of integrity is really important when it comes to negotiations. Brother, I love the way you call out the elephant in the room, that elephant being about money and pricing, because I think as this second point, sometimes people steer clear on price and it can feel uncomfortable speaking about the money side of things. But it really is, like you said, brother, really important to understand your value. And when you understand what the deal is about, when you understand what the relationship is and where it stands, then the negotiations can be a lot more successful. And the third takeaway point to use in negotiations is really making sure that you get your contracts right, understanding what your contracts are saying, getting advice on those contracts if you need to, but really just being clear in the communication piece, the wording, the agreement before signing a contract and in the contract process itself, using that to be on the same page on that relationship front.
Yep.
Brother, do you have anything that you'd like to say as some parting words of wisdom?
Not really. I just wanted to say that I think that what you're doing is great. It's a great platform. I commend you on all of your recent achievements. I think you're an amazing person, and you're doing a lot for blackfellas in terms of being a role model and showing our people and the rest of the country, non-Indigenous people as well. Who we are as a people, through the stuff that you do, and that we are thriving in lots of different sectors. And I appreciate your support of me and the things that I do, our friendship, and I think what the podcast's gold. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come and have a yarn with you. And I think just keep doing what you're doing because you are really making a difference to and for our people, and that's really, really important. You know what I mean? Especially for our youths, they need to see that we can do whatever we want to do and be whatever we want to be. We can be lawyers, we can be business people, we can be clothing designers, we can be artists. We can do whatever we want to do, and obviously be, and education is key to that. But I think we also need to really understand who we are as a people and understand that our culture and us as a people is really valuable and that we have value, and they need to understand how valuable that is to other people and the world. You know what I mean? And to really learn as much as you can about your culture, about our culture, and that it's a learning process, and we're learning more and more every day. Some of our mob have more or less than others, but we have to hold on to what we've got and really do whatever we can to give back to our communities and our families, know who we are as people, and at the center of who we are, for me, it's faith and my belief in God and the way that I've been brought up. But I think, culture's, a big part of that as well. And I think if we know who we are and we know how valuable we are as a people and as the oldest living culture in the history of mankind, if we understand that, especially our youth, if they understand that, how powerful that is, and how much that is worth to other people, and the contribution that we can make to society through that, then it changes the whole mindset of what you can do in terms of achievements.
Yes.
Everything is achievable if you know who you are and you've got that, that outlook on life about who you are, who we are as a people. We're pretty deadly, and that's why we're still around.
Absolutely.
Thriving. So, yeah,
And brother, you're a great example of Black excellence, and I believe that what you're speaking of as well is this notion of Black excellence, because we've got amazing leaders like yourself and others that we can look to, be inspired by, and we're on this journey together.
mm,
Let's keep supporting each other. Let's keep standing strong together.
yes,
And for you listening to this podcast, remember, jump onto the DD Designs website and grab yourself a Just Gammon Deadly t-shirt. Dion Devow, thank you so much for being on this
thank you, brother
episode.
Matt. Appreciate you.
Cheers, brother.
Keep doing what you're doing.